Last week, I was in the middle of a really important podcast interview when my phone rang. You know when your phone goes in the middle of an important meeting or while you're doing a presentation and you just want the ground to eat you up because you've asked everyone else to turn their phones off. Anyway, I answered it because I saw it was my son, and the day before he'd got a nasty head injury playing rugby. He'd been okay in the morning and had gone to school, but this time he was saying, "Mum, I'm feeling really unwell. I'm in the nurse's office. They've given me some paracetamol. They say I need to come home now." I went into a flat spin. I was in the middle of a really important interview. I didn't want to just drop everything and go and pick him up. After all, he was safe. He was with the nurse. I felt really flustered. And I said, "Look, I will come and get you when I can, but just stay there for now." Now, one of our most popular guests has been Dr. Chris Turner, and he came to speak at our last FrogFest virtual event on how to challenge difficult behaviour. He's the co-founder of Civility Saves Lives. He's a consultant in emergency medicine. He's a really busy man. He's asked to speak at conferences all over the world. He's done TED Talks. And I feel very honoured that he will come on the podcast and talk to me about this really, really interesting topic of just how do we challenge difficult behaviour in our colleagues. And whenever I speak to him, I learn so much. And when my phone went, he was just in the middle of talking to me. He was explaining all about how different people react to challenges, how you get the really competitive people and how you get the really avoidant people. And anyway, that podcast will come out in a few weeks' time. But I was really focused on what I was doing. It had taken a while for us to coincide diaries so that we could record the podcast. I didn't want to let him down. I wanted it to be a good episode because I knew how tight his time was. And so I was mortified when the phone went off. And I was thinking to myself, well, I need to finish this interview. And if I don't finish this now, when on earth are we going to do it? This is going to be a really, really important thing for people to hear. So I said to Chris, "Oh, Chris, that's my son. He's got concussion. You know, he'll be okay. He's with the nurse." And Chris just stopped and said to me, "Rachel, you need to go and pick up your son." And I said to him, "Actually, Chris, it's fine. He's with the nurse. You know, he's all right. He's talking. I'm sure he hasn't done anything too bad." And he said, "Rachel, family always comes first. We can do this another time." So we finished up. I thanked him and I jumped in my car. And as I'm driving along the road, I'm starting to feel worse and worse. First of all, I'm feeling really irritated by what's happened, by the fact that I had to stop it, I had to rearrange. There's going to be more work now in the editing and stitching it all together. Then I start to think, actually, maybe my son isn't very well, and I start to feel a little bit worried about my son. Then I start to think, gosh, Chris was right. Family does come first. What was going on with me? Why didn't I see that immediately? Why didn't I drop everything and run? And then I thought, oh gosh, what must Chris think of me? I started to go into this absolute shame spiral. And then it dawned on me. Chris had 100% given me permission to drop everything, to say no to the podcast, to set boundaries and go and sort out the thing that was really important. And who had pushed back against it? Me. I had pushed back against the no. I had pushed back against my own boundaries, against my own values that family came first. Even when someone gave me permission to stop, to drop things, to say no to the podcast, I still couldn't do it. I was totally my own worst enemy. Everyone else had given me permission. I wouldn't give myself permission. And I realised that the biggest barrier to me setting limits around my work, saying no, is me. And you know, I could have gone off and said to my son, "I'm sorry, I just couldn't stop that podcast because Chris was such an important guest." And I could have said to my husband, "I had no choice. I just had to finish. You know, it was so inconvenient for me and I couldn't do it." But actually, I could do it. I was given permission. And while it would be really comfortable to blame other people, it was me. It was me that stopped myself. Because we have so much internal pressure in these moments, don't we? Me? I was really hyper-focused on what I was doing. I was enjoying it. You know, maybe there was some competitiveness about, well, this needs to be a really, really good podcast episode that people are going to listen to and recommend to their colleagues. I wanted to maintain a great relationship with Chris and not feel like I was wasting his time. But I was very focused on the achievement. I was very focused on the task. I felt some pressure. I felt some time sensitivity. And this inconvenience of having to put boundaries in and say no to the podcast was really irritating for me. I didn't want to say no. It wasn't that I couldn't say no. And it was nothing to do with Chris and all to do with me. And it got me wondering about how often we fail to say no and set boundaries, and it's not about anybody else. It's not about anyone else not giving us permission or being unreasonable. Quite often, they've 100% given us permission. I remember doing a talk at a school once for a favour for a friend, and there was a teacher sat at the back looking pretty pissed off through the whole thing. And one of the questions she asked me was, well, you say you just need to say no and set boundaries, but if I don't do it, no one will. And she said, I have had 2 teachers in my department off sick. It's meant I have had to cover all their work, do all their marking. I'm at my wit's end and I just have to do all of this. What could I say to her there and then? I said how much I felt for her, and it was a difficult situation and all of that. But as we drove back to the station, my friend said to me, she said, we on the senior leadership team have told that teacher that she does not need to do it. We have told her to leave that stuff. We have told her not to do it. But she insists. She's her own worst enemy. There is nothing more we can do to give her permission to say no, set boundaries and not do it. The pressure was entirely coming from her. She was caught up by everything in front of her, and she almost was enjoying being this absolute victim of circumstances. And maybe it made her feel really, really valuable and very, very important because she was so busy. I don't know. But when I think about myself, sometimes that's how I feel. And setting boundaries and being able to say no and stop doing stuff, maybe that means I'm not quite so important and as busy as I think I am. Because I think what we get wrong about all of this is that a lot of the time when we feel like we can't set boundaries or say no, we say it's due to other people. We blame other people. And that's quite a comfortable place to be in because it means none of it's our fault. We can go right into victim and say, I'm totally helpless. There's nothing I can do about this. We're victims of our circumstance. But that is a profoundly disempowering place to be. It's very frustrating. We have no control. There's nothing we can do about it if we feel it's all other people. It causes us to be stressed and overworked. And it really is the definition of the urgency trap. We're at the beck and call of everything that comes at us, and we think it's going to help us avoid feeling guilt or shame. But actually, I think it's the other way around. We actually feel more shame when we feel that we can't say no and we don't say no. But if we start to acknowledge that one of the key reasons why we don't say no is the internal pressure we put on ourselves and our internal motivations and our perhaps warped priorities and the fact we really get into the moment and get blinded to everything else, then we've got a way ahead. Then we've got things we can actually change. We can take control of that because if it's us that are stopping ourselves saying no, we can change that. We have control over what we do. And we're much more powerful, and we've got a hope of things being different. So how do we do this? Firstly, understand that nobody else can stop you saying no. Literally, unless they've got a gun to your head, nobody can force you to do anything. It's always your choice. Whether you stay, whether you go, whether you do that thing, whether you don't. It's you that chooses. Now, there might be consequences of not doing that thing. You might lose some money, you might lose a job, you might go to jail. If you shoot somebody, right? There are consequences. But at the end of the day, it is all a choice that you make. Now, of course, our internal thoughts, what's happened to us in the past, our circumstances, the context, they all jumble up. They all contribute to that. But at the end of the day, you're in charge of your behaviour, what you say and what you do. You're also in charge of the thoughts that you decide to hold on to. Eleanor Roosevelt said, nobody can make you feel inferior without your consent. So firstly, we need to realise that we are in control. And if you're someone that blames other people all the time, where your locus of control is external, you're going to have a very hard life because you're just going to be the victim all the time. You're blaming other people and you'll be completely dependent on what other people say or do or what you think other people expect of you. Secondly, we need to realise that saying no actually protects us from shame and guilt. We think it's the other way around. Often we think if we say no to someone, we're going to feel really bad, but we're going to feel really, really guilty. And yes, we might feel uncomfortable in the moment. But if you don't say no to stuff, if you focus on what's in front of you rather than those things that are your core values that are really important to you, then you're going to get some cognitive dissonance. Just think how you feel when you tell your family that it's really, really important that you're home to eat a meal with them in the evening, and then you fail to set boundaries at work and you find yourself in an extra meeting. But you know that one of the most important things in the world to you is family and being there for them, but you're doing something that contradicts that. This is cognitive dissonance. And that's where you start to feel shame. And that's the root of the shame that I was feeling as I was driving to pick up my son from his school. I was thinking to myself, well, I always say family is really important. I say I want to have a good relationship with my kids and have them knowing that I'm always there for them. I've got their back. And yet here's me acting in a way that shows that the most important thing to me is the podcast and my busy life, not them. That's cognitive dissonance. That causes a lot of shame when your actions directly contradict your inner values. It's just like when I react badly to something, if I shout at someone or I say something nasty, I feel shame because one of my core values is kindness. And that sort of cognitive dissonance and shame that we get in those situations is far worse than the slight discomfort and guilt that we feel when maybe we disappoint somebody because we don't do immediately what they want us to do, or we inconvenience them by having to rearrange a podcast. So then how do we make sure that we don't get this cognitive dissonance? So we're not just going by the most comfortable thing in front of us. And when we avoid saying no to things, how do we then actually get ourselves back in line with those things that are really, really important to us? Well, when we do the talk about how to say no, set boundaries and deal with pushback, I often tell people to use power mantras. So your power mantra might go something like, I am choosing to leave work on time and go to my Pilates class so that I can keep myself healthy and I don't go off sick long term with back pain, even if someone criticises me for not doing those extra reports before Monday. That's how it goes. You're sort of predicting the pushback. I wonder whether we need to use some inverse power mantras. I think you should say to yourself, I am choosing not to do that thing. So I'm choosing not to say no. I'm choosing not to leave work on time. The two supplementary questions you need to ask is, number one, is there a bloody good reason not to? So the only bloody good reason I can think of is it's going to cause severe patient harm or severe problems in your work. Like, we're going to miss out on £500,000 worth of funding next year. Yeah, that would probably be a good reason not to leave work on time. But there's something else you need to ask yourself. And that's, is that more important to me than the alternative? Is it more important to me than one of my values? So I'm choosing not to leave work on time because I need to finish this insurance report before I go. And that is more important to me than having food with my family. If I use that mantra for what happened the other day, I'm choosing not to stop this podcast now and go and pick up my ill son because it's going to be a bit difficult to rearrange and I don't want to put Dr. Chris Turner out. And that is more important to me than my son feeling that I'm there for him and putting my family first. And when we put it like that, we start to realise that the reasons we're giving ourselves for boundaries crumbling, not saying no, not disappointing the people there in the moment are just ridiculous. There's hardly ever a bloody good reason. If there is a bloody good reason, then great. But if you know what your values are, like family, like kindness, like being present for people, like speaking the truth, like challenging when necessary. So you might say to yourself, I'm choosing not to have that conversation with that person about how they upset me the other day because I'm worried about it being awkward and upsetting them. And that's more important to me than having an equal and healthy long-term working relationship. Eek. We need to start to get rid of this cognitive dissonance between what we say is really important to us and what we do in the moment. So the inverse power mantras, once again, it's rather than I'm choosing to, so that, even if we're saying, well, I'm choosing not to because, what's my reason? Well, it's because it's awkward or I feel it's just going to add to my workload in the future. Is that a bloody good reason? Yes or no? And you need to pay attention to the final statement. And that is more important to me than making sure I'm fit and well and healthy. It's more important to me than being there for my family. It's more important to me than actually telling the truth about what's going on. It's more important to me than focusing on that really important project that I know needs to get done. Because so often we are just our own worst enemies. Other people have given us permission to set boundaries and say no. But in this sort of martyr-like, I'm so important, if I don't do it, no one will state, we just go, no, it's fine. I know you're giving me permission, but no, I will just sit through. I will just keep on going. Thinking that we're avoiding guilt and shame when actually what happens is we feel guilty and we feel a lot of shame at a later date that we've just allowed ourselves to be pulled by the moment. And actually, no one is going to thank you. No one's going to give you a medal and go, oh, you know what? They just ignored the things that were important to them and then just pushed on through with everything in the moment? Of course not. And I'll finish with a quote from Glennon Doyle. She says, discomfort is better than resentment. That discomfort in the moment when you need to say no to yourself, when other people have given you permission to say no, but you need to say it, that's better than resenting yourself long term and feeling that bitterness and shame which comes from you not focusing on what the really important stuff is for you. So let's get comfortable with saying no, just to not other people, but to ourselves. Let's get really honest about the real problem. And if you recognise that that happens to you when you're in the urgency trap, just so focused on everything that's urgently coming in at you and you're focused on ticking all that stuff for everybody else, even if other people have given you permission not to, then do join our upcoming masterclass on the urgency trap. We'll get really clear about the really important stuff for you right now. We'll take your to-do list, we'll stick it through a mangle, and we'll help you realign to what's really important for you. Just click on the link in the show notes if you want to join us.